This is 6.0, lesson 2. So for this lesson, we are going to convert between fractions, decimals, and percents. And we're going to square and cube numbers. Okay, so this first section we are converting between our fractions, decimals, and percents. So our first percent that I give you is 16%. So in order to go from a percent to a decimal, we can look at our cheat sheet up here and it says to move the decimal 2 places to the left. So right now if I have the number 16, my decimal place is right behind the 6. And in order to change a percent to a decimal, I move my decimal 2 to the left, meaning that 16% is the same thing as 0.16. Then I need to convert that to a fraction. And in order to convert it to a fraction, I have to go from a decimal to a fraction. So it says the place value that the decimal ends in tells the denominator and reduce if possible. So our last number 6 ends in the hundredths place, which means that my denominator is going to be 100. 16 is going to be my numerator. Both of these numbers are divisible by 4. So to reduce, this is going to give me 4 over 25. Our next one, I give you the decimal 1.05. So in order to go from our decimal to a percent, we move the decimal 2 places to the left, or to the right, I'm sorry. So we have 1.05, we move 2 to the right, so that's going to be 105%. Then to change our decimal to a mixed number, we look at our last number. It is in the hundredths place. 1 is a whole number, so that's going to stay in front of our mixed number. And we're going to have 5 over 100. Both of these numbers are divisible by 5. So this is going to give me 1 and 1 over 20. Our next one, I give you 4/5 as our starting fraction. So to go from a fraction to a decimal is what we'll have to do first. Go from a fraction to a decimal, we divide the numerator by the denominator by putting a decimal at the end of the numerator and adding zeros if needed. So this is really 4 divided by 5. So we're going to do 4 divided by 5. Well, we obviously know 5 goes into 4 0 times. So we have to add a decimal and a 0. 5 goes into 40 exactly 8 times. So our decimal is going to be 0.8. Then to go from a decimal to a percent, we move our decimal 2 places to the right. So that's going to give us 80%. Our next percent is 4%. So to go from a percent to a decimal, we take our number, we write our decimal behind it, and we have to move our decimal 2 to the left. So that's going to give me 0.04. Then to convert that to a fraction, my 4 is in the hundredths place, so we have 4 over 100. Both of these numbers are divisible by 4, so that's going to give me 1 over 25. Then we have 2.74. In order to change 2.74 to a percent, we move our decimal 2 to the right. So that's going to give me 274%. Then we have to change this to a mixed number. 2 is our whole number, and we're going to put 74 over. 4 is in the hundredths place, so it's going to be over 100. Both of these numbers are divisible by 2. So this is going to be 2 and 37 over 50. Our next one is 1/16. This means that we are going to do, in order to change it to a decimal, we're going to do 1 divided by 16. 16 goes into 1 0 times, so we add a decimal and a 0. 16 goes into 10 0 times, so we add another 0. 16 goes into 100 6 times, so then we have to do 16 times 6, which is 96. So I'm left with a 4. I have another 0 to add. 16 goes into 40 twice. 2 times 16 is 32. So that leaves me with, I'm going to bring that over here, leaves me with 8. I have to have another 0. 16 goes into 80 exactly 5 times. So our decimal is going to be 0.0625. Then to change this decimal to a percent, I move my decimal 2 to the right. So this is going to be 6.25%. Our next one is 1.6. To change 1.6 to a percent, I move my decimal 2 to the right. That's going to give me 160%. Then to change this to a mixed number, 1 is my whole number, and I put 6 over. 6 is in our tens place, so we put it over 10. Both of these are divisible by 2. So we get 1 3/5. Our last one, 1/6. In order to change that to a decimal, we have to do 1 divided by 6. 6 goes into 1 0 times, so we add a 0.0. 6 goes into 10 once, and we get 6. We're left with 4 when we subtract, and I have 40. 6 goes into 46 times, and that gives me 36. I'm left with a 4 again. It goes into 6 goes into 46 times, I get 36. This pattern is going to continue. I'm going to keep getting 6s. So we're going to write this decimal as 0.16 with the repeat over just the 6. It is not going to go over the 1 because the 1 is not repeating. Then to change this decimal to a percent, I have 0.16 repeating. To change it to a percent, we move our decimal 2 to the right. However, we have to remember when the 6 is repeating, I still have a 6 behind here that's going on. It's continuing forever, so this is 16.6 repeating percent. Okay, now let's flip it over, and we are going to look at squaring numbers. So in order to square a number, all it means is to take the number and multiply it by itself. So when I have 5 squared, that means I'm just doing 5 times 5, which is 25. 6 squared is 6 times 6, which is 36. 10 squared is 10 times 10, which is 100. 30 squared is 30 times 30. And I know those numbers seem big, but really we can just do 3 times 3 is 9, and then add our 2 zeros at the end. So when we do 80 squared, we have 80 times 80. Really we can do 8 times 8, which is 64, and then put our 2 zeros at the end. 12 squared is 12 times 12, which is 144. Remember, you can use your multiplication chart to help with these. Okay, now we're getting to decimals. So we have 0.4 squared, which is 0.4 times 0.4. Okay, so I have a little hint up here. It says, remember that when multiplying with decimals, the total number of decimal places in the problem tells the number of decimal places in the answer. So we have 2 decimal places in our problem, which means we're going to have 2 in our answer. So we can go ahead and do 4 times 4, which is 16. But I have to have 2 decimal places in my answer. So I will have 1, 2, which means that my decimal is going to go in front of my 16. Okay, my next one, I have 1.2 times 1.2. Really, I can think of this as 12 times 12 and then worry about my decimal places. 12 times 12 is 144. However, I have 2 numbers behind my decimal place, which means in my answer I need 2 numbers behind my decimal place. So 1.44 is my answer. 0.011 squared, we're going to multiply that by itself. 11 times 11 is 121. But then we have to realize we have 6 numbers behind our decimal. And right now I only have 3, which means I need to add 3 more zeros before I write my decimal place. 17 squared, we're going to do 17 times 17, which we can see that on our multiplication chart is 289. 19 squared is 19 times 19, which is 361. 1.36 squared is 1.36 times 1.36. Now that is one that we cannot see on our multiplication chart. So we're going to do this longhand. 6 times 6 is 36. We carry our 3. 3 times 6 is 18, plus 3 is 21. 1 times 6 is 6, plus 2, we have our 8. We bring down a 0. 3 times 6 is 18, carry a 1. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10, carry a 1. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. This time we have 2 zeros. 1 times 6 is 6. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 1 is 1. We add up these numbers. We have a 6, a 9. That's going to give us a 14. We carry the 1. This is an 8 and a 1. Oh, I apologize, guys. I do have something off somewhere. Let me double check myself. Okay, no, I was right. So we have 4 numbers behind our decimal place, which means I need 4 numbers behind my decimal place. So our point is going to go right there, which means we have 1.8496 as our answer. Okay, this time we have 1.8 times 1.8. We can look at our multiplication chart and see that 18 times 18 is 324. I have 2 numbers behind my decimal place, so it's going to give me 3.24. Our next one, we have 4.7 times 4.7. That one's not on our multiplication chart, so we're going to need to work this one out. 7 times 7 is 49. Carry the 4. 4 times 7 is 28, plus 4 is 32. We have a 0. 4 times 7 is 28. Carry the 2. 4 times 4 is 16, plus 2 is 18. So we get 9. This is a 10. Carry the 1. 1 plus 3 plus 8 is 12. Carry the 1. We have a 2. And then we have 2 numbers behind our decimal, which means I'm going to have 2 numbers behind my decimal in my answer. Same thing with this one. This one's not on our multiplication chart, so we're going to have to work this one out. We have 9.4 times 9.4. 4 times 4 is 16. Carry the 1. 9 times 4 is 36, plus 1 is 37. We have a 0. 9 times 4 is 36. Carry a 3. 9 times 9 is 81, plus 3 is 84. We add all these up, so it's going to be 6, a 13, carry the 1. That all is 8 and 8. We have 2 numbers behind our decimal place, so we're going to have 2 numbers behind our decimal place in our answer. Our next one, to find the area of a square, we do length times width, but since it's a square, all of our sides are equal. So that means to find the area of a square, I'm going to do 8 squared, or 8 times 8, which is 64, and we have our units, centimeters squared. Our next one is 9. It's a 9 by 9, so 9 squared is 81 feet squared. And our last one, we're going to have 0.7 squared. So 0.7 times 0.7 is 0.49 meters squared. Our last part is cubing numbers. If I cube numbers, it means I multiply it by itself 3 times. So 5 to the 3rd power is 5 times 5 times 5. We have 5 times 5 is 25, and then we have to multiply by another 5, and that's going to give us 125. 6 cubed is 6 times 6 times 6. 6 times 6 is 36. And then if we work out 36 times 6, 6 times 6 is 36, carry a 3. 3 times 6 is 18, plus 3 is 21. So this is 216. 7 cubed is 7 times 7 times 7. 7 times 7 is 49, so we're doing 49 times 7. 7 times 9 is 63. Carry the 6. 4 times 7 is 28, plus 6 is going to be 34. So our answer is 343. Letter D, we have 50 times 50 times 50. Well, we already know that 5 times 5 times 5 is 125. Then we're just going to carry down the 3 zeros that we had from above. Letter E is going to work the same way. We're going to do 20 times 20 times 20. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. And we carry down our 3 zeros. 300 cubed is also going to work the same. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. And then we have 6 zeros. Letter G, we have 0.2 times itself 3 times. We know 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, but we have 3 numbers behind our decimal. So I have 1 here. I need 2 more behind my decimal, so there's our answer. This one we're going to have 0.3 times 0.03 times 0.03, or 300ths. 3 times 3 times 3 we know is 27, but we need 6 numbers behind our decimal, and I only have 2, which means I need to put 4 more zeros in the front. Our last one, 0.4 times 0.4 times 0.4. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4 is 64. We need 3 numbers behind our decimal, so I only need to add 1 zero this time. To find the volume of a cube, we do length times width times height. Well, since it's a cube, our length, width, and height are all 8. So this means we're going to do 8 cubed, which is 8 times 8 times 8. 8 times 8 is 64. If I do 64 times 8, 8 times 4 is 32. Carry the 3. 6 times 8 is 48, plus 3 is 51. So we get 512 centimeters cubed. Then we have, for this volume, we have 9 cubed, which is 9 times 9 times 9. 9 times 9 is 81. So we're going to do 81 times 9. 9 times 1 is 9. 9 times 8 is 72. So we have 729 feet cubed. And our last one is 10 cubed, or 10 times 10 times 10, which is going to give us 1,000 meters cubed.